Okay. Are we ready?
Yes, we are ready.
All right. Welcome to WTF Stories and Advice. I'm Caroline Cranshaw.
And I'm Daryl Gove.
All right. So we are starting a new segment where we're going to talk about some what the fuck news that's happening in the world. Serious what the fuck. And there's been some serious what the fuck is happening news in February. We are now in March, so hopefully things won't be as crazy. But I've been talking about this a lot with different people because I have a big fucking mouth and I like to talk. And it's amazing to me how many people just didn't even know. They hadn't even heard about it or just really didn't. Well, that's a very good point. Okay, so what I thought we would talk about today, because it's a topic we've talked about before, is the UFOs and why I believe they are releasing these stories or putting that out there, what they are creating as a distraction. Now, this is just my opinion, but I thought we're going to talk about the spy balloon, the 4 UFOs that have been shot down over Canada and America, and the Nord Stream pipeline, because in my head, they all tie together.
Interesting. Let's go.
Okay. So the first thing we hear about is this Chinese spy balloon, right? And yes, I think we started to hear about it in the media around February, maybe end of January, but apparently in January 28th, this balloon enters the U.S. airspace, like in Alaska. January 30th, it was then seen over the Canadian airspace, and then it re-enters U.S. airspace over Idaho on the 31st of January. February 1st, it was in Billings, Montana, and then it just proceeded on its way across America through South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, until February 4th, where it showed up in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, apparently there is a whole bunch of military bases and things that the U.S. government doesn't want other countries, especially China, having access to. But apparently they didn't want to shoot it down overland because there's too much of a risk of hurting civilians. So they shot it down on February 4th, about 6 miles off the coast of South Carolina.
Does that even make sense? The risk, I mean, isn't most of the USA farmland, forest, mountains, even some desert thrown in there, and there's very few places that are actually populated?
Yeah, especially through the Midwest or over places like Montana. But it's not just a regular balloon, right? Apparently it's the size of 3 buses, and it's got what looks like a satellite attached to the bottom of it. So apparently it was quite big. And I guess they're trying to keep Americans safe. So they shoot it down. There was all this coverage about it. And we didn't think that much about it. Apparently there was like 3 or 4 balloons that drifted over the U.S. when Trump was president. No one ever shot it down. But then on February 10th, they come out with another story that there was an unidentified flying object over northern Alaska. And they shot that down. And then on Saturday, February 11th, over northern Montana. And that was shot down. And then on Sunday, so the February 12th, over Canada, over the Yukon Territory, the U.S. apparently shot down another UFO, as well as on the same day, another one over Lake Huron in Michigan. I talked to my brother about this, and he was saying that he saw fighter jets flying overhead, but didn't see a UFO.
I thought it was Trudeau that shot them down.
According to what I have read, and this was in Newsweek, this particular bit of information, that it was the U.S. Air Force that shot it down.
Wow. Finally.
Yes. Well, these weren't balloons. And the one over Michigan, they describe this object as an octagonal. Am I saying that right? They describe this object as an octagonal object. Why can't I fucking say that word?
Oh my gosh, there's an octagonal overhead.
I know it's 8 sides, right? Octagonal shape, and it had strings hanging from it with no discernible payload. Now, have you seen the movie Nope?
Nope.
You have to see the movie Nope. I am telling you, it is so good. It's Jordan Peterson, same guy who did Get Out. I think, what's the other one he did? Us, maybe? I can't remember the name.
Jordan Peterson, and the guy that did Get Out, or are they the same? Did Jordan Peterson do Get Out?
Jordan Peterson is the writer and director of Get Out.
Jordan Peterson, like the Canadian psychologist?
Oh, am I saying... No. Fucking what's his name? Jordan Peele. Okay, totally got that wrong. Okay. You're like, he's also a writer and director?
Is there anything he can do?
Okay. Jordan Peele from Key and Peele, like really funny comedy show, and he's done Get Out. God, I would have to do that a little bit over. Yeah,
keep it. Everyone needs to know the real you.
I love Jordan Peterson as well. I think he's fantastic. He says some stupid, offensive shit sometimes, but hey, when no one's recording us, don't we all? And even when someone's recording me, I say some pretty fucking stupid, offensive shit.
I like that he defends our right to say stupid, offensive shit from time to time.
Yeah, because that's how we learn, and we have to be able to voice our offensive thoughts in order for us to get our head around it and to have it corrected by other people. If we're not even allowed to say these things that are now considered offensive, like how are we going to learn or change? Okay, Jordan Peele, totally got that wrong. So Nope is a fantastic movie, absolutely fantastic movie. It's a brother and sister who train horses for Hollywood movies, and their father dies in a tragic accident, so they've come over and run this business, and they start seeing a UFO over the property, and animals start going missing, and all this stuff starts happening, and it's really good. Oh, it's so good. But the concept behind the UFO is so interesting. I don't want to ruin it, but
don't tell.
I won't ruin it, but it's interesting. They talk about the shape with strings hanging from it, but the concept. I'll give you one little thing. The concept behind some of Jordan Peele's thought process apparently is what he based some of the stuff in it is off of the biblical descriptions of angels. Now, I'm not saying the UFOs were angels or anything like that, but if you go and you look up the biblical descriptions of angels, they are not like these beautiful people with big wings. It's completely different and really out there. Very, very interesting. All of a sudden, there's this spat of things being shot down, and what they claim, and the reason why they say all of a sudden, is that they basically changed their radar detection efforts after this Chinese spy balloon, and that's why they suddenly are seeing all these different objects.
Isn't it that they decided later it wasn't a Chinese spy balloon, or are we coming to that? Like they said no, it was just from a hobbyist club, is what I heard.
The Chinese spy, the first one?
Yeah, that the American government released something that said it was from a hobbyist club. And it wasn't, in fact, a spy balloon.
No, I haven't heard that at all. If it's a hobbyist club, they are next level with what they've got. Because there are photos of the spy balloon that you can see. And it's massive, with a massive satellite attached to the bottom of it.
I mean, I assumed that was a lie, but I believe that was something that was said as oh, this is what it was after all. It wasn't a problem, maybe to make people not worried after they'd let it go across the country for 8 days without being shot down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think China has even acknowledged that this was a spy balloon, right? So they had all these different, suddenly UFOs being shot down. And the interesting thing is they just haven't been able to recover any of them. The only thing they've recovered is the Chinese spy balloon, but the rest is just too hard to get to, or the water's really cold and frozen, or the water's too deep, or it's in the Rockies, or whatever it is. But they can't seem to find any of them. They've given little descriptions. One apparently was this long cylinder shape. Another one was this octagonal shape. And but there's no photos released. There's no recovery. They gave up the recovery very quickly because of like wind and stuff like this. And so here's the thing. Like, and I found it so interesting because the people that do know that, we've done a few podcasts about UFOs. They're like, oh my God, Caroline, they've got UFOs and they are real. And I'm like, nah. If the government is coming out and telling you it's UFOs, then it's not. It'll be a distraction or there's some other motivation for why they're doing that. So here's what I think they're covering up. Now, on February 8th, a man named Seymour Hersh, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. Amazing, yes. Very respected journalist that has broken lots of stories and stories about things that governments have done in secret or denied or manipulated in a lot of ways. He came out on February 8th with a report on his Substack, which is very interesting. I'm going to have links to a lot of this information below or in the show notes, so go check it out. That basically the U.S. was behind blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, which is if you're familiar, it's a pipeline that goes from Russia to Germany, and there's actually two of them. One of them was not operational yet. The other one had been going since, I think, like 2011, and they supply something like 45% of natural gas imported by Europeans. They had turned it off, I think, in August, right before it was blown up, and this was last year, because of this conflict going on with Russia. But the thing is that Biden himself, along with several of his, like the undersecretary of the U.S., all came out and said that if Russia invades Ukraine, they are going to bring an end to the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, there's literally a video that you can watch online of Biden saying that. He says, if Russia invades Ukraine, we will put an end to Nord Stream 2. And the reporter's like, but isn't it German? I mean, how is it? Biden said, like, trust me, we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's like he's got a plan. He just gave it all away.
So as soon as this pipeline was blown up and everyone's like, oh, it's Putin. And I was like, no way would Putin blow up his own fucking pipeline that brings him billions of dollars a year, right? That he mostly paid for, along with Germany, France, and several other countries contribute to this, right? And it is a massive source of gas and heating for the European Union. And so the fact that this Seymour Hersh comes out and basically has evidence that it was the U.S. This is now an act of war. The U.S. committed an act of war against allies, not just Russia, but our own European allies, which is terrible. And guess who now supplies the gas to Europe and Germany? The U.S. Much increased price than what they were paying for the Russian gas. But they were against it from the beginning. As soon as this thing was being built in 2000 and whatever, that's very scientific of me. But as soon as it was being built in 2008, 2009, the U.S. was very anti it because they felt like it would bring too much power and too much money to Russia, right? And they knew that this was, they think it's something like 40% of Russia's money coming in, right? It's a big part of their revenue.
And that is true. But from the point of view of Europe, it's just trade. USA trades with China, trades with Russia, trades with all over the world. And yes, it is energy security and so on. But also, Europe needs gas for its industry to be cheap so that it can compete on the world stage. And so, yes, of course, it makes Europe more connected to Russia. And I could see USA's opposition to that. But on the other hand, are you not buying anything from Russia or China?
It's just, this is the thing. You can't go around controlling everybody and how they make money and how powerful they are. And it really makes me angry that the U.S. believes that they can do that. And I am an American. I get it. People don't like hearing this about America. You really are brainwashed as an American. And I know a lot of you listening are Americans, but I grew up pledging the allegiance to the United States every day at school, right? Hand over heart, I pledge my allegiance to the United States of America. You are brainwashed into believing that America is the greatest country in the world.
Do you know where else is like that?
Where?
And so if you're from USA and you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, but it's true. It's not only America that does this, right? So Argentina is very similar. My partner's from there, and they grow up and they're almost worshiping the flag and the country, and they sing a song over and over about getting back Las Malvinas, the Falkland Islands, which, by the way, never belonged to Argentina ever. Like they were, but they were Spanish, and then Argentina seceded, and blah blah blah. But they've never really been theirs. But it's part of their identity. It's part of their song. It's in their everything that they do is all about these islands are ours. To the point where you can't have a rational conversation with somebody from Argentina. Well, you can. I haven't been able to, and and actually have a discussion over why they believe they're theirs, and the reasons are just random. But without going down that road, it's to give you a point of view as somebody from USA. Would you look at China and say, well, they automatically own Taiwan? Would you look at Argentina and say they automatically have this own the Malvinas? Have big countries going around and throwing their weight around happens when they're self-important, and it's not that USA isn't amazing. But what we need is a powerful, amazing USA that's not doing sneaky things. Like we want diplomacy, not sneaky behind the back of Germany, go and blow up its pipeline of its friend.
Exactly. And I do believe America is great. What it was founded on is great. And there are amazing people in America. But that's not that means that other countries aren't great too. When they say they have freedom, so does everybody. There's so many countries that have freedom. Or education, like the education system in America is just falling apart. I mean, but it is everywhere else as well. But it just, when you start to travel and you see that other countries have healthcare and they have peace and they have freedom and they get a lot more from their government, and Americans are almost like tricked into that's like selfish and you just want to live off the government if you, God forbid, wanted some healthcare. So it just makes me really sad. But America just is going around, and I know I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but we just need to be very aware of what's happening. And I think people, you have a voice. The government works for us, and you should be writing to your senators, writing to your congressmen, demanding an answer behind this. And like, if they're doing that, what else are they doing? I mean, that was so blatant.
What if some people are listening to this and thinking, right, you guys have, yes, Biden said that or whatever, but you guys have jumped to conclusions around the Nord Stream 2 and who did it?
But why would Russia blow up its own pipeline instead of just showing it? It had already kind of shut it off recently, right? Why would Europe freeze itself? Who has the motivation and the opportunity to do it? Well, and Britain did publicly.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's motivation and the fact that they said they would do it, but also there's the ability, like not every country has the ability to blow up a deep sea pipeline, because you have to get, bomb charges down there. They did it stealthily. They put the explosives down and then they separately blew it up later. And, some people are saying, oh, maybe Ukraine did it. Well, Ukraine can't do that. They don't have the capability, and they wouldn't do that without the say-so of USA. It's just like they wouldn't have done that. And most other countries couldn't do it or have absolutely zero motive. Apparently Sweden went and checked it out. Did you hear about that?
I hear they said they can't say anything due to confidentiality, right? And state secrets or something. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they went down and they had a look and investigated the explosion, and they won't release their findings, even to Germany, their ally and neighbor, because state secrets. But apparently lots of people know what actually happened. I mean, the reason this journalist could confidently publish the article was because of leaks, because lots of people know, but it's illegal to leak, right? So people can go to jail if they knew that it was the USA, and leaked it. Whereas we don't know. We're just using our eyes. We don't have state secrets. And we're like, obviously, it was USA.
It was. And I can't remember what country came out and said, "Thank you, America," with a picture of like the gas bubbling up from the sea. Was it Turkey?
Yeah.
Like immediately.
Well,
it was.
Well, I know that in the USA, everybody was like cheering, like, this is a great thing. If it hadn't been the USA, you would have all these politicians going, we need to investigate. This is a threat to national security. If they can blow up that, they can also cut cables here or do this there. So the fact that they were going, oh, this is really great, awesome, and this is such good news, makes me suspect there. But I don't know who else was cheering. Maybe Ukraine.
Possibly. But it's like, who's really getting hurt is Europe. And the prices of, people just can't even afford to heat their homes. I don't know how much Germany is paying, but I do see a lot of information coming out of the UK that it's just unbelievable how much their energy costs are now.
It's incredible. And I was just looking at an article today because they've apparently put caps at how much can be charged. But in Scotland, they're paying more than £2,500 a year. So in New Zealand dollars, that's 5,000 New Zealand dollars. And it's cold there. And people who are, like, just for context, the UK has about the lowest pension in Europe. So when you retire and you're old and the government gives you your allowance, which in Europe, you grow up knowing that you're going to get that. That when you retire, you turn 65-ish, you're going to get paid for the rest of your life from the government. It's something that's expected. And you're meant to be able to live off this money. And so a lot of people, they don't save for a pension because the government's going to give that. Well, in the UK, you've got the lowest one in Europe. You've got super cold winters in the north, especially in Scotland, where you just need the heat on all the time. And if you ever have visited Scotland in the winter, you'll know that people really use their heating. Like, nobody scrimps on it. They use it all the time. So what this means is that people are going to die. There are going to be old people, and particularly the elderly, or people on a disability benefit, or people on the benefit, that are going to not put the heating on because they don't have the money, and they are going to get sick and they're going to die. That's what's going to happen in the winter, unfortunately.
And that's terrible. And that's the same in Europe. And people are already coming out and saying they have to literally choose between food and warmth. And this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like the fact that the U.S. government could be behind that or contributing to that just because they want to weaken Russia, I think is just horrific. And, I'm not pro-Putin or a Putin sympathizer. I'm just anti-war. And the fact that we are even considering that we are going to, and now they're just threatening China, right? We are looking at the face of a world war. They're literally talking about drafting people. Apparently, 75% of 18 to 29-year-olds are unfit to be drafted in America.
They'd be like, I knew there was some benefits.
Maybe that's a good thing. You could be like, sorry. But it's just insane. For what? What? For freedom? Is that what we're fighting for? For freedom? Really? This doesn't seem very free to me. And how is this benefiting people? And apparently, they were really trying to, Russia and Ukraine were trying to do some peace talks, and the U.S. put a kibosh to it.
So all this is happening, and then look over there, UFO.
I just find it's interesting that there was 4, as soon as this story broke, confirming, and he had many, a lot of sources. A lot of people are just saying it's total fiction, but the fact that several, not only the president, but several other high up public figures in U.S. government said, we are going to do this if they do that. So it's like, you said you were going to do it. I'm like, hello. And then it just really, I find it really upsetting. And it's like, how many people are going to die? How many people are not making ends meet when there's more than enough money?
And at the end of the day, it's, they are pissing off allies. Like Germany had already, I think the pipeline had just been completed and it was ready, and whether it was about to open, I'm not too sure, but it was already not in operation. It was already like, hey, we're not going to operate it. It's a little bit of, I think it's a misstep. USA, we're in a world now where we've got the EU with a collective economy really to match the USA. We've got nuclear powers within the EU. We've got India, which is coming up behind with over 1 billion people. It's democratic and it's developing quickly. We've got China, and that's aside from the rest of the world, like the BRICS economies and so on. So we're in a world where I think more diplomacy, less sneaky bomb would be helpful for the future of, the world. Because if we get into, there's 1,600 or 16,000, there's a lot of nukes floating about in active deployment. We need to just do whatever it takes to calm this down whilst maintaining integrity. And I just don't see any diplomacy whatsoever happening. And not just from USA, from anywhere. We've got an absence of any leaders that have the ability to just have a good chat, to say some good words, to de-escalate things, to calm people down, whilst having clear boundaries.
Exactly. And it is, and I think BRICS it's interesting that you bring that point up, because I think that is really threatening the US's, dominance over the world, basically. And BRICS, if you're not aware, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and I think Saudi Arabia is talking about joining. Even Germany apparently made some inquiries. There's Argentina, a lot of South American countries are all wanting to join up with these BRICS nations. And so basically the way I kind of look at it is it's like East and West, right? It's the kind of Asian and Russian countries kind of banding together, some of the South American. And what they're banding together against is the American dominance over the world and their ability to, they go in and they manipulate and they have these coups and they overthrow democratically elected officials and put in their own agendas, and always for their own benefit. And I think every nation should put their needs first, but we need to all work together, and we're all the same we all bleed red. We're all human. We may have different...
The Welsh, obviously.
Daryl, stop it. Yeah. We all need to work together. I don't know. It's getting very, very scary. And I think that America is floundering a bit, personally.
One of the things that the BRICS nations are doing is they're looking at reintroducing the gold standard. So moving to a gold-backed currency that they would all use to trade. Because what happens at the moment is people are trading in the US dollar, and then the USA can just spend as much as it wants, do whatever it wants, and then just print more. And that doesn't just devalue their own money, but it devalues the money that everybody else is using. Whereas if there's a gold standard, then money holds its value. And that's what used to happen in olden days. So if they reintroduce that, and if it's successful, so if you've got Brazil, Russia, maybe India, China, South Africa, Argentina, what you've got is the majority of the world's population using a currency going against the dollar, and there's nothing else that can happen in my experience, which, I'm not an economic expert, but I do follow people on Twitter and so on that talk about this. There's nothing else that can happen except for a crash in the dollar, of the dollar plummeting, and that could wreck the USA economy. So I think these next few steps are very crucial. I think that the whole world has to be very careful. And if I was in the States or Argentina, which I think is the country that has the most personal savings of USA dollars outside USA, what I would be doing, I would be turning some of that into gold or silver, because I would be concerned that I would lose my money. And certainly that's the advice that, I don't give financial advice, but it's the advice that I'm reading from people like Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's online and he's begging people. He's saying, please, if you if you just do one thing this week, buy one silver coin, it's $25. Like, buy it, please. And he's begging people to buy it. I think he even said, I beg you, in one of his tweets. I could be wrong. But
he
it's
said you're more, that, which I agree. I think it is a way of like hanging on to the value. The other thing that really concerns me is how they're writing into legislation of these bail-ins rather than the government bailing the banks out. They'll now do these bail-ins where they take the customers of the bank's money and save themselves that way.
Yeah, well, I think if a bank collapses, the government shouldn't bail them out. I think that, it's a very controversial.
Should we? Should we though? That's what scares me. Is it our responsibility? I mean, only something like 4% of money, supposedly circulating money that exists, actually is backed with cash. I saw this one guy, I can't remember his name. He's some podcaster or some YouTube dude that always has his shirt off and is extremely muscular. But there's this clip of him where he called up his bank and he said he wanted $250,000 in cash just to show on his podcast of how much money that is. And they said to him, oh, well, that's a lot. And we're going to have to order that. And, it's going to take a long time. And he said, that's fine. I can wait. No problem. And so it took 5 weeks for him to get the money. And they're only able to give him $160,000, excuse me. And he was like, wow. So this means your money in the bank is really just bullshit. And it's just numbers. So my advice is put your money into assets that cannot just disappear and poof in the wind.
But we have to be careful not to give advice because we're not qualified financial advisors.
Yes, I'm not giving any advice, but I'll tell you what I'm doing. So I'm not giving any advice, but I am extremely concerned that we do have an economic crash coming. I think my personal opinion is there's going to be some event, don't know what, but there's going to be some event that just creates this waterfall cascade of some type of economic crash and
the internet going down.
I don't know, massive earthquake or some type of waterfall event or black swan event, they like to call them, that is going to trigger off this cascade that just is not going to be able to be stopped. And I think that there is a real possibility. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but there's a real possibility. Banks could fail. People could lose their money. I think they're also setting things up so that they can then bring in this new digital currency, right? And what they'll do is just be like, don't worry. We're going to give you whatever you lost at the bank, this equivalent of digital currency. And that sounds really good, but it really does take away any privacy, any freedom. The currency can be programmed. So if they're like, you've had too much beef this month, nope, no more beef for you. It really is ushering in a social credit system. And they're saying, oh, well, we need to do this to compete with China. We need communism to compete with communism? Like, really?
Nah.
No.
I reject communism in every form. I reject fascism. And
it doesn't
also
work.
Being anti-fascist, but acting like a fascist. Like, if you're anti-fascism and anti-communism, then what you should be is democratic, and you should have the values of free speech, free press, etc. Whereas as soon as we have to be like China to compete with them, then we've already lost. But on that note, I'm going to have to run away soon, and I think that I feel sufficiently cheered up by this very positive and uplifting podcast. So hopefully our listeners all if I don't know what the helpline number is in USA, but in New Zealand, you can just Google Lifeline or Samaritans if you need someone to talk to after listening to us.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know I am a great big fun sponge right now.
I'm not doing a fun
Hey, I have a really good on the podcast. If you go through, there's a clearing your fears and stress meditation that you can listen to. Or if you go to our websites, there's some free downloads. I don't want to freak people out. I know I am freaking people out. I feel like I am watching things happen. Okay, here's the thing. Maybe Elon Musk seems to think that we're living in a simulation. Maybe this is all a simulation, and that means possibly we can change it. I want to know how I can fucking up level out of this, whatever level I'm on now.
Easy. What you do is this, right? So if you don't like the way the world is going, just remember this. It is happening due to free will of the people. Whether you believe it in individual free will or collective free will, the free will of the people is that tensions are happening between Russia and USA, that the economy is going, and so what we need to do is just step out of the reality where we're heading towards all this shit and step into the reality where people are reasonable. And if we start expecting that and believing it and looking for it, then we're going to find it. So let's just step out of the reality where everything's going to shit and step into the reality where we're in a time of beautiful transformation, where, you know, some shit has to go down because the way the world was operating was not good and it wasn't fair and it was messy. And so we're going to step into a new reality where people take back, reasonable people take back control, where there's more fairness and more love, more sex, if you want that, or whatever it is that you want, you can have more of it. Peace, maybe.
That's what I'm thinking. And maybe sometimes it all has to fall down in order to be built back better.
Or it doesn't fall down, but it like goes, ooh, it just wobbles and people are like, let's reinforce some good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully. And I'm probably just being Chicken Little, right? And the sky's falling. And the thing is if you just turn off your TV and you stop looking on the internet at all this shit, then I'd be completely oblivious to it, right? And so is it really affecting me? Then no. So maybe this advice is for myself. I need to stop going down these wormholes of freaking out about what's happening in the world. I've always had a tendency to do that, obviously. And I think that's why I'm a therapist, right? Because I had to work so hard on myself to not get spun out into anxiety and terror of what's happening and to be more positive. And maybe I need some hypnotherapy sessions to work on that.
I think there's been, you know, every time in history, every time throughout the whole world, there has been massive tragedy, massive bad things happening. The thing is we hear about all of them now through social media and the news, and we hear about constantly. And if we put them together, like UFOs plus Nord Stream plus war in Ukraine plus financial crash plus all of the bad things that could possibly happen. Oh, P.S. pandemic, maybe pandemic strike number 2 is going to come out. Who knows? If we put it all together, it does feel very messy and scary, but that's also catastrophizing, right? Thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And the best way to deal with that is what you do and what you teach your clients is you have to trust yourself. You're going to cope. You know, you can go prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. You know, you can still look positively whilst, you know, having a backup plan. If the power cuts during a storm, you know, you've got candles in the cupboard or you've got a solar torch. So it's not about worrying about the storm. It's just trusting your ability to cope with what happens and trusting in people. Like during the cyclone here in New Zealand, there's some messy stuff going on, but there's also some really amazing people doing amazing things happening. There's big senses of community happening. And I trust that no matter what happens in the world, people are fundamentally good, except for the cunts, and that they will be, you know, will witness more humanity from each other.
That's what I'm hoping for. I think so. Yeah. And I just wonder over the past 3 years, we've just had so much kind of fear and propaganda. Like propaganda was legalized in the US in 2013. And so there's a lot of propaganda being fed to us of being told certain things in order to influence us in a lot of ways. And people are much easier to control when they're fearful.
I loved watched Russell Brand. I don't know, could have been Jimmy Kimmel, some talk show guy. There's a guy from MSNBC and he's complaining about Fox News. And Russell Brand's like, yeah, maybe they're bad with their propaganda, but you got to clean up your act too. I mean, look, don't complain about other people's propaganda. Clean up your own propaganda first. It's just messy. Watch how he said it. It's much better than.
I saw that. He's so good. I love Russell Brand. He is so intelligent. Like he speaks so quickly, just watched him on Joe Rogan. He speaks so fast. You just think, how quick does this man's brain work, right? Like, it's just unbelievable. And just the way he's able to come up with stuff. And he's been speaking out a lot about what's going on in the world. And I think, so I think I just need to take a step back or look at things objectively. But I also think that, like you said, there's way more good people in the world than cunts, right? Well, but 4 to 5% of the population are sociopaths and psychopaths, right? Who are lacking empathy, who really don't care if people get hurt and are all about themselves, right? So there always are. But, 95% are not sociopaths. 95% of people are good and kind, and maybe it's not that high, but most people are. And so I think that what we need to remember is that we outnumber the bad people in the world, and we have power in numbers. And so I think people need to come together. Politics are, there's just so like either you're left wing crazy or you're right wing crazy. And I think there needs to be a new party that's like universal, whatever country can adopt it, is the common sense party, right? Where we're just not totally in the middle.
In today's world. Murder policeman.
The CSP party.
Cut out that where I said that, because it's an expression that is not going to translate well.
What did you say?
Murder policeman.
Oh, no.
Let's talk. What a policeman?
No.
It's for like
Fuck the police.
No,
we'll
I
cut
love
that
the police.
out.
We just need to fund them better. Okay, so
common sense. Yeah. But I think we just need to have some common sense and not be so left-wing that our brains fall out our ass, and not be so right-wing that we're trying to control women's bodies. And it's just like, where are the people in the middle? I'm politically homeless, I feel like, because no one really is motivating me to feel like this person is talking sense and what can we do? It just seems to be everyone's gotten so extreme and divided. And apparently that is the MO of like certain agencies. I won't say which ones, but that's the MO, to divide people as much as possible, create all of this division, racial division, political division, religion. And then we aren't together. We're not working together, and we're not able to stand up in a unified group and fight back against things that are wrong.
Hey, divide and conquer. It's been going around for centuries, right? We know divide and conquer. And I don't think you should feel bad about bringing this up. That's the whole point, right? It's, we're talking about this. It may be scary, but you're bringing this into the news because it's what the fuck news. It's like, what the fuck? This is news, and it's good to talk about it because at least it brings awareness to the fact that things are a little bit more scary. Because sometimes in the mainstream media, if you read that, you're going to think nothing's happening because it just doesn't report on this crazy stuff. So I'm going to have to run. Okay. So I don't know, any last words of wisdom or fooldom?
Don't worry, be happy. I think that and this is probably advice for myself, is focus on the people around you, turn off the news a little bit, just listen to us and we'll tell you all the crazy shit. No, not really. Never trust anyone who says they're the one source of truth, which we were told by the New Zealand government for a couple of years there, which is just insane. And that it is all going to be okay. We now know.
And we now know it was all a lie what they were saying, but
it all is coming out. It is going to be okay, and that we need to focus on connection and working together and how we can help each other, and no matter what, it's going to work out. So
Exactly.
And so if you have any stories that you want us to cover, or stories you want to tell us, or advice that you need, write to us at WTF Stories and Advice. Share this podcast, give us a review. It just helps other people find it, and so we can doom and gloom all over their lives as well. Yeah.
And if you want to spot the hypnosis that your government and all the agencies and other countries and the media are using on you, then come and train in hypnosis and hypnotherapy with us. We will be your tutors doing live classes. We will teach you personally. It's really fun, and the most beneficial skill you can learn that you can apply in every area of your life. Come and learn with us.
Absolutely. All right, on that note, bye.
Bye.